Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special edition of Focus on Liberia, our show we call Between the Headlines. My name is Dennis Jah, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In this edition of Focus on Liberia, we are glad to have Ambassador Louis Garseedah Brown joining us from Monrovia. But before I introduce Ambassador Brown, let me welcome the host of the Hour of Politics, who's joining me in this very special interview, Mr. Anthony C. He is the host of the Hour of Politics right here on Focus on Liberia. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Dennis, thank you. It's good to be here. I follow Mr. Brown, and having this privilege of interacting with him in what I think is a major interview, it's a good experience for me as a guy trying to learn the ropes of discussing national issues. It's good to be here. Let us do this.
Thank you. I also want to welcome someone who shared some form of stage with Mr. Brown on the University of Liberia campus, Mr. Mohammed Sharif. Mohammed is our political analyst. Comrade Sharif, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Dennis, it's great to be here, and I want to welcome Comrade Militant. No, I'm not going to get into all of that. Master Louis Brown. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ambassador Brown, we want to say thank you for accepting our invitation to be here. Welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And let me thank you for what you've been doing and you continue to do to inform our people, to provide for a healthy dialogue on national questions, but also let me use this opportunity to wish Liberians everywhere a blessed and good Sunday.
Thank you so much. We are really happy to have you. Ambassador Brown, first thing I want to ask, how are you? How is Monrovia? We learned our president is not there. He's not, he's gone for some time. How is Monrovia doing? How is Monrovia with our president? We have been there, and we believe he's gone for a good length of time.
Yeah, we will wish we will spend the meager resources of the country much better than President Weah is opting to do. There's difficulty everywhere. Yesterday, I was in Bassa, visiting a town there, having meetings with citizens there, and conditions in the country are just bad. So for the president to sort of go find a way to rest himself, I would call it, seems to, resembles an abandonment of post. Especially for the length of time and the resources, that he has to expend, while many are here suffering, people going to bed hungry. Somebody said to me, the country is on autopilot. Maybe the president is bored. He certainly is unable and unfit for the office. So the job is just too difficult for him. So he likely is absconding, finding relief and reprieve outside the country. But he helped to create this. So I wish he was here to help the Liberian people overcome it. But like the guy said, the country is on autopilot. And the worst part about it is that many of the mechanical equipment are in disrepair, are damaged. So not only are we on autopilot, but we don't even know if the fuel tank has enough fuel to take us to landing because the mechanical equipment are all damaged. That's the situation we face today.
I hope there's enough fuel to take us. Ladies and
I hope.
gentlemen, we want to welcome all of you across the globe. This is Focus on Liberia. We are happy to have Ambassador Brown. Let me start with the first question, Ambassador Brown. I watch you, I too went to university in 1989. At the time, you were a student leader, in your prime. So it was kind of a little bit, So let me start with the MPFL connection. How did you get on that side? And why you stayed there ever so long, in spite of the atrocities that the NPFL was committing?
So you're right. At the University of Liberia, we joined other students to advocate for change. And many looked up to us and called us their leaders. To lead is a responsibility to others. And so we went to jail along with others. We advocated for change. And then the war broke out in 1989. I had actually just entered law school when the war broke out and actually reached Monrovia. And so I went into hiding somewhere on the old road. And I believe it was August or October 9, one of them. The MPFL took over the old road. And then, like many others who were there, we crossed over behind the lines. And as I was crossing, like everybody else along the lines, I was heading a family of about, if my memory is right, anywhere between 7 to 10 people were looking up to me for their own safety. And so as we marched along, I started, like everybody else, to see the street littered with bullets and bodies. As a result of the exchange between the MPFL and the government forces, we walked toward Dupo Road. And as I approached, there was a checkpoint, a G2 checkpoint, and all of us had to form the queue. So as we approached the G2 checkpoint, I saw a friend of mine from the University of Life, but we had known each other, in fact, from St. Patrick's, where I graduated from high school. And we became brothers from that moment. The late AC tier faculty. And he kind of emboldened me a bit because I was petrified like everybody else on the line. I mean, I was seeing these combatants for the first time, dressed in all kinds of garbs, looking particularly fearful. And then as we were walking to the G2 checkpoint, I had put my family ahead of me, and I was trying to be the last so I can see if anyone was taking off the line, if anything I could do at that point. So there was this family behind me. Apparently, the mother was Madingo, and she was trying to inquire from her daughter. She was in a state of shock and confusion and trying to ask her daughter what's going on. I suspect because I couldn't really understand. And the girl was, and everybody else on the line was so jittery with fear, overcome by fear. They were telling her, please don't say anything. Stop. Tell your mom to shut up. She can't be talking like that. And one of the combatants overheard her inquiring. The woman was really scared and couldn't speak English, I assume. So that was my first encounter with someone being shot. and she was pulled off the line and shot right there. I mean, just um, if a foot or two from me, my knees were buckling. I was petrified, scared like everybody else. And so I then after that incident, I'm confused. I don't know what to do. And then I spotted uh, my brother Tia Faculty. He had been living on Dupo Road, and of course, the MPFL had taken that place for a while, and he had sort of overcome his initial shock and fear of what was obtaining. So he offered me to get off the line. We call each other Peking. Peking, what you doing? What you doing on the line? Where everybody? Where your family? So he said, Mama, let go. Move on the line. You got to. Then he whispered to me, he said, look, here you got to be brave. You got to act as if you're not afraid. When you get scared, people here will take advantage of you. This is how it is. So I said, you've been here, but I haven't. You sure? He said, Mama, trust me. Let go. Just walk freely. So I got off the line, took some people, took my family. We walked, never went into the G2. The G2 the building is still there. Right before you get to the market, there's a building right there. You pass behind the building to go to that. So he said, where you go? I said, where? He said, I'm here on Dupo Road. I said, I'm trying to make my way to Habel. I have an elder sister who lives there. And so there's this family and I which are also traveling together. They live John Swakanga. Family and I. So we decided, look, let's make our way to my sister in Habel and probably we'll be better off there. But then we started hearing about don't go through Fendel. Whatever you do it's a difficult place to cross. So on our way, we went to the soul cleansing mission. But interestingly, after Tia and I gave me that advice and said, wherever you're going, just seem brave. Don't look scared. So I put Swa's son over my shoulder because I had nothing in my hand I was traveling with. And we started walking off. I told him, thanks. I will try to go to Habe. He said, okay, I'll try to catch up with you. At least I know where you are. So as we're going, then in this open field, there was another checkpoint. I didn't know the guys were looking at me from a long distance. So as we approached the checkpoint, there was this lady who joined us from on the old road. She was Gil. And where I was in hiding from the AFL soldiers because of who I was as a student leader, we offered her to be with us most evenings. So as we were all walking together, I said to her, it's your time now because we on your side. I can't speak this dialect. You have to try. So this girl started hearing a conversation that I couldn't understand. This guy had a knife in his hand. And as we approached the checkpoint, he came toward me and asked me to leave the line. I had this kid on my shoulder. He asked me to leave the line. And he claimed I was a government official. And this girl was in a back and forth with him. Fortunately for me, this girl had a child, a baby she was carrying. And later I learned she convinced them that I was the father of her child. That's what saved my life at that checkpoint. Right after that checkpoint, you cross, I still remember you cross a little creek and then you walk along a pathway with rubber trees and then you go into soul cleansing mission.
So clinic.
Yeah, people call it soul clinic, but the soul cleansing mission. So, I mean, the rubber tree, you look to the left, the rubber tree headed to soul cleansing missions. We're walking to the left. So as you look there, you see bodies. So Anyway, we got to the Soquency Mission, Kanga, and I, and a host of others. Some I'm sure will hear this story and very we reached on the main campus, and then we were warned it was getting pretty dark, it was getting late. You all don't need to risk going further. You guys can sleep here one night. The intent was to sleep there one night and then head off to Habel. They said there were back roads they were going to show us the following morning. So as then we were told, because of the number of people that were hoping on me as the brave one, the leader of the pack, they couldn't post us on the camp, even though I was offered a place. They said, no, let's try and find, you guys need to sleep outside the camp. There was this unfinished building, and we call it Manjo Quarter. There were a lot of people who lived there. Some of them will tell this story one day. So we moved into Manjo Quarter. We put touches to the window. Fortunately, the guy had put his doors in, but it was the walls were not plastered. He had his door and he had some steel bars to the window. So we fitted the steel bars with catches and decided to sleep one night. One night turned to many nights, and that place became our dwelling place. That was my first encounter with the NPFL. Man,
Ambassador Brown, if I'll just come in. I know you speak about your journey across NPFL rebel lines. I have my question specifically is, do you have, did you have other options? There were individuals who did not take that path. I can speak of Mabutu Nyepan. I can speak of others, thousands of other militant brothers and sisters who did not take the path that you take. Did you have any other options, or was this the only option that you have? Also, and I'm glad that you brought up the brutality committed by the NPFL on your way to Buchanan. You did see that a Mandingo woman right in front of your eyes was shot dead.
This actually happened on Dupo Road.
Okay, so this is in Monrovia. So this is, you're in transit, and this is something that happened before your very eyes, and you're seeing the sheer brutality of the guys who said they're coming in to bring us a new revolution, a change of government. So I wonder if, when you met Mr. Taylor finally, did you talk about the atrocities being committed against crime people, innocent crime people, innocent Mandingo people, other innocent lives that were lost in this process? These people weren't working for Samuel Doe. Samuel Doe didn't know them. They were not officials of government. So it was senseless the way that, those people were murdered. Did you, at any point in time, discuss this with Mr. Taylor, protested this? You are someone that I know who fought for social justice and peace. So how come those things, what were they discussed with Mr. Taylor? So what was, your ideological leaning? I mean, that you were so fascinated with the NPFL and you call it an experiment.
Okay, so you ask multiple, you have many elements in your question. First, you ask me if I had other options. Then you ask if I protested this or if I ever discussed this. So one of the first, there was absolutely no option. I don't know where Mobutu may have been during the war. There was absolutely no option. People who were seeking refuge or in hiding in certain places where when the places they were overrun by a foes, whether that foes were NPFL, ULIMO, LERD, or the AFL, you were foes behind the line, especially if it happened in a way that you had no knowledge of. So to ask me if there were options available, Mohammed, no. The answer is no. And for many in Liberia, I don't know if you were here during the war, Mohammed. There were no options until you were overcome. In fact, while in hiding on the Oro, word reached me that Mulu Lavla, who I'm sure you remember from the University of Liberia, and Wo Gabi Tapia were arrested and summarily executed by elements of the armed forces of Liberia. I was running away from the army of President Doe that we had openly and publicly opposed. So returning was not an option. So no, for security and safety, many went into places across the country. Not as somebody going to Wagabor or I like the other place, man. They're shooting there too, man. I think I will just go and go to the other place. It was not that available to people. Point number one. Point number two. I was going to tell you that the first time I ever laid eyes on President Taylor, physically, I had heard about him. I had never met him before the war. The first time I actually saw him face to face was when I, along with other citizens of Bassa, I had reached to Bassa after I left. In fact, we managed to leave Manjo Quarter, which was right next door to Soul Cleansing Mission. When, I don't know if you all remember when Prince Johnson and Ecomore moved forces toward Painesville. That's when Habel. So, are we on?
Yes, you are freezing a little bit, but we're on. Your connection is freezing, Mr. Brown. All right, we're still having that freezing. Mohammed, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. So let's take a short break while we prepare. And during this break, I just want to play a clip about Mr. Brown before the TRC.
The bombing, the fighting had returned to Habel. I was at the time situated in Buchanan, Grand Bassa County. A former student leader and activist, it became clear to me that in more ways.
Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome back.
It became clear.
All right. So you can go ahead, sir.
So, but by the way, Mohammed, it's important to state here that all of the factions were involved in various forms of warfare and atrocities. All of the factions. And so, but I'm talking about what I saw and what I witnessed. So I'm not necessarily saying to you that only the MPFL was involved in committing atrocities, but that's what you asked me how I got to where I went. So I was telling you my experience along the way, because sometimes people mistakenly think some of us didn't have these experiences during the war. Including being arrested, including being tied, including being jailed. I went through all of that during the war. So
your experiences, right. So those experiences that you have, the atrocities that were committed, did you and if you can just directly speak to that question. Did
I
you
was going to,
directly address this with Mr. Taylor as someone who I consider at the time as a student leader in the fight for social justice? I mean, here are people being massacred right in front of your very eyes.
Yeah,
Were these
let him get to
discussions?
that.
so you really didn't know the war. Mohammed, I'm not sure you lived through the war. Were you in country? So, so all right. So let me say this. The first time I met President Taylor was in Buchanan at the fairground. 4 Bassa young men had been arrested the night before and summarily executed. There's a guy in the States, his name is Buster Verdier. Buster headed what was called Concerned Citizen Movement. Here, his health is failing now, but his memory is still very good. So even though I was displaced in Buchanan, I joined the effort. I became one of the leaders. And I was asked on behalf of the people of Bassa to read the statement denouncing in strong and categorical terms the arrest and execution of the Bassa citizens. In fact, we led a demonstration for about a week in Buchanan, and there are living witnesses all over the place who will tell you that. And at the end of that protest, Mr. Taylor came to Buchanan along with with a good bit of the MPFL machinery. And yes, on the fairground in Buchanan at the stadium, I read the position statement on behalf of the people of Bassa denouncing the arrest and execution, not just of Bassa citizens, but of Liberian citizens. And one of the things we tried to do was, in the end, to persuade the MPFL as a fighting force to accept to be converted into a political force for the business of deriving peace in our country, and not to pursue the military adventure as a way of ending or sort of seeking victory in the conflict. So I think we were able to do that. I think we joined, that's why I joined others in forming the National Patriotic Party, which became the political vehicle. The MPFL then decided it would pursue a political resolution to the conflict in our country that has seen many faces and many lives lost and many properties destroyed. So that was my first time ever seeing President Taylor. And that was in Buchanan. That was before the fall of Buchanan to Ecomog. And when Buchanan fell, I moved to Yekepa. I was in Yekepa in Nimba County, displaced when one of the peace agreements were signed. So I came to Banga, where I had heard my friend who I had earlier met on the Dupo Rotia faculty now resided. So we lived there in a place in Manjo Yard. It's up Bove Hill. I don't know if many of you are familiar with that area. So one morning we're playing Scrabble because there was very little to do. We're there playing Scrabble one morning when this jeep came into the yard and said we were summoned to the presidential palace. We went there And there were a number of our friends, many who are still around today. And there was a crowded room in the front and then a back room where everybody was sitting. So I met Councillor Francis Galloway, who I had known from Monrovia before the war. He was one of the lawyers for all of us who were activists. And he came and then he was the overall head chair of the Concerned Citizen Movement. So we are also interacted. And then he came out and said, "Oh, Louis, you are going to you are going to the Transitional Legislative Assembly to represent Basa." Again, I was not in the room. I was not in the meeting. Tia was not in the. And then he told Tia, "Yes, you are also going to Grand Cru." This was the product of one of the peace agreements that had been entered into. They had given the NPFL, now it was called the National Patriotic, in fact, it was the National Patriotic Reconstruction Assembly government.
Right.
Ambassador Brown,
Yeah.
if I may, and we reached that deal for an hour and 30 minutes.
Correct.
I and maybe the listener can sit here and get all the details about what happened. But for the sake of your time, we don't want to go above you shutting your answers. And so to that, I will ask this question. I'm glad you said that you have to form the political arm of the NPFL that became the NPP.
Mm-hmm.
What was Charles Taylor's message that was in line with your advocacy as a student leader then? And what was also the goal of the NPFL, a rebel group you saw committing atrocity in your presence? And so for you to have like, okay, we'll turn it to a political arm, maybe it will do some good. And given that when Taylor finally became president after the election, the very tactics exhibited during the time of the fighting, those things surfaced in his government. And yet, you participated in that government and you play your role. Did you at some point share any remorse? Or do you want to maintain your argument that there were no options? And so what you did was the best you could do for your country and countrymen and women.
So let me tell you the answer there.
Mhm.
There is this movie you guys need to watch.
Okay.
You remember the pilot that landed the plane on the Hudson River?
Yep.
So they took him into a conversation now to investigate the options he had.
Mhm.
And so those sitting in a silence and quietude of not making real-time decision with 250 people screaming in the plane started to ask him, but we did this simulation and you could have landed at another airport. And he actually said to them, no, he said the computer simulation showed that it was possible to go land in another airport. Look, on the old road, one evening while in hiding, we heard this lady screaming at the pitch of her voice, calling for help. Everybody we're living under the curfew, so everybody was scared. Nobody could help her. The following morning, I heard there was a body lying down. This was under the armed forces of Liberia. I heard there was a body lying down on the old road, on the football field. When I went to the football field, there to see whose body it was, the lady who had been screaming that night was lying there with nothing on. I recognized this lady from the University of Liberia. And I will give you the name of the guy who and I buried her in the sand right there because we couldn't leave her lying down there. The lady name was Cecile Toy. So when you're talking about being in the middle of a war, atrocities being committed on all sides, your friends with whom you advocated at the university summarily arrested and killed. And then you ask me, what were your options? Did you have an option? My option was to stay safe and don't get killed. Then there was something else that moved me. Murphy Cannon is the name of the sheriff. I'm sure you know Murphy Cannon.
Yeah,
He's a lawyer now at Benedict Sano's law firm, Councilor Benedict Sano's law firm. Call him up anytime and ask him. He will tell you Louis Brown and I buried this woman with everybody looking at us. And we literally dug a shallow grave with our hands to bury her. She had been raped and killed by soldiers and left there in the open, on the open football. I saw that as well.
Which group those soldiers belong to then, Ambassador Brown?
So we were, this is Oro, Anthony.
Right.
This is Oro. This is before the MPFL covered the Oro for us to cross. This is the Oro. So there were atrocities being committed everywhere, by all sides fighting. So the issue was not which side was committing the atrocity. The issue, how do we end the conflict that I felt responsible for as a student leader? That was and how do I keep myself and others safe by ending the war? Because as long as the war continues, atrocities will be committed everywhere across the country. Ending the war was something I thought I would focus my attention on.
As member of the MPFL.
Look, sometimes, and I made this point to the TRC. If you go back to the recording you played earlier, you will hear me describe what the MPFL was.
And that's the question I'm coming to, Honorable Brown. But what I'm not hearing.
But let me answer this. No, I beg you. Yeah. I need to finish this train of thought. So, Mohammed, there was also a guy, I met in LAC about 2 o'clock in the morning. There was Dr. Bromsky, Walter Bromsky, and Dr. Paul Harris. They were both surgeons there doing surgery. And this young man, we are taking him there. I did not know this boy, but he knew me. I entered the makeshift surgical theater, and this guy called my name, just like Mohammed called me Comrade Brown. He said, Comrade Brown. And I was shocked. I said, do you know me? This was a combatant who had taken a bullet to his stomach. And he said, yeah, and you people were our leaders on campus. This was a University of Liberia student. And he said, Comrade, you don't let us die for nothing. Those words have never left my ears. Those words have never left my heart. It never left my mind. That's why I felt similarly responsible for the war in our country. I have never taken a military training. I have never carried a weapon. I have never pointed a gun to anybody in my life, in my entire life. But I felt as a student leader, I had also set the pace for what had morphed into a war in our country. That is why I never ran from Liberia to go to any country and seek refugee status. I kept running away from phases of the war, but I never left Liberia with the view that I will not return, I will run away from the war, because I felt responsible, including for that university student who lied there on a makeshift operating, makeshift operating theater, reminding me of my role on the University of Liberia when I was saying to President Doe and others, we will resist with bullet to our breast. That guy had taken a bullet. I had not. And I felt responsible. The woman who was shot next to me on Dupo Road, I felt responsible for her. Because unlike many, I felt responsible for the war. So when I said at the TRC that the NPFL was an experiment that was more than what we wanted to make it seem, more than just the combatants or what people saw. And I did say the NPFL comprised people from all walks of life. It is true. I saw market women, not as fighters, but as supporting an idea for change in the country. And that's what I meant when I said the experiment that we can come together for a cause that is just is one that is possible. The NPFL show it can be done for what good or bad, but we can come together in this country. That is what I meant. I never, there's no roster anywhere that would say I enrolled, I became a soldier, I took a training, none anywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown, and again, we want to be as because quick as possible, because what I was looking for, the first question was, why did you stay on the side of the NPFL in spite of all the atrocities? Mohammed also asked, what did you tell Taylor? Because these people were committing atrocities. And also, Anthony is asking, what was in the message of Taylor that attracted you? Because you say this is an idea, this is an experiment. I wonder, when you say experiment, what was your hypothesis going into that experiment? So if you may, please be a little more direct so that we can have some time to answer questions.
So where was not an atrocity being committed in the war, during the war? Certainly not in Monrovia. A guy and I, me, Tia Fakate, Mohammed, you know this guy, Matthew Jaliba. He was teaching at the University of Liberia. You remember Jaliba?
Right.
You know
social
what Jaliba?
Social science.
Jaliba and I, along with Tia Fakate, we were together. We crossed many of the lines from Dupo Road all the way to Buchanan. Jaliba, Matthew Jaliba, Tia Fakate, and I. Do you know where Jaliba was killed? Jaliba was ultimately killed at an ECOMOG checkpoint in Monrovia. He came back to Monrovia when there used to be this, there was this ceasefire, and then there was this trade of missions, ceasefire tests. So a delegation came from Monrovia, an ECOMOG peacekeeping mission delegation went there. Jaliba decided he would return to Monrovia. He was more comfortable in Monrovia than he was, and all of us were, to be honest, displaced in Buchanan. Jaliba was killed at an ECOMOG checkpoint. During the war, there was no place, there was no faction that did not commit atrocity. Go back to the TRC report. My point was, how do we focus? How do I support ending the conflict?
Right. What made the NPFL that vehicle to bring the change that you actually agree with, that indeed this is the side I can be on to effect those changes, those things that I was advocating for on the campus of the university? That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, so Dennis, your question suggests I had an option about which faction to go to, which faction not to go to. The truth is, if ULIMO had overtaken the old road, where do you think I would have gone?
for safety. I would have gone where they would have directed me to go. I did not leave Monrovia voluntarily, Dennis. It was not a choice that took me behind the lines, if you want to call it that.
So
Dennis,
you
if
said,
you,
I'm in the water already. Let me just take bath.
You I don't know. Were you here during the war?
Yes, I lived in the
That's a
war.
question you will not ask. So please tell me, if you were on the old road and the MPFL took over the old road, where will you go? Where would they direct
I was,
everybody in there?
I was in the war from 1990 all the way. I have documented my experience. I was in Bannersville. The first
Okay.
war, I walked to Habel and took a car to Buchanan and went through Yakipa. 92, I walked to Lac. 96, I got in a car and went to Lokatu.
Why
And
were you? Were these options? Were these options you were exercising? Why you didn't walk to Topmanburg?
Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Ambassador, if I may come in.
Yes, please.
Mr. Ambassador, so you were, one of the intellectual leaders of the MPFL. And so so certainly when you were appointed to the NPRAG representing Grand Bassa County, you then became one of the top officials of that government, of that transitional arrangement in rural Liberia. And so there were trips that the MPFL, adherents of the MPFL were able to make in and out of Liberia. And so if you are telling us now that you were a reluctant adherent to the MPFL, when you had those options, how come you did not defect? Because it seemed to me what you're telling us is that you don't agree with the atrocities that were committed by the MPFL. And so the option that was available then was anytime you had the opportunity, how come you did not defect? You did not leave the country. You did not leave that situation. Others did. Toga McIntosh Gateway did. Mr. Charles Bromskin at some point did. And even with the MPP government, people were still being killed. There were no protests. Did you protest the killing, for example, of people from Nimba County, great leaders from Nimba County who were murdered by Charles Taylor for no reason. And we already talked about the tens of thousands of other ethnic groups that were killed. So options available were to leave the country, defect from the MPFL. How come you didn't exercise those?
right, I walked to Guinea, Mr. Sirleaf, and there we met. So go ahead,
Mr. Brown said there were no option, that he had no option. And I see that you and Dennis breaking the same question, and he was very definite. I don't have to defend him. This is a better communicator than I am.
Right, but no, what we're saying is that is
Ray, can I answer? Instead of you guys debating on your own show, let me answer for myself. Don't defend me answering. That's a simple answer. And the problem I'm having, you guys want me to speak briefly about the complicated things you are talking about. You ask a complicated and loaded, not really complicated, because it's what I'm getting is that most of you don't have the experience that many people have. So you're suggesting the option available to me was to go to the border and run away to another country. I have never abandoned this country, including now. This is why I am here in Liberia. I am one of the opposition leaders today who's challenging this government fearlessly from Monrovia. In fact, my house is just a stone throw from the president's house. Even though the president went to his church and threatened me, I would say he threatened my life, I have still said I'm not leaving this country. Some of us don't run away, especially when you run into people and you feel responsible for the circumstances. I ask you, where was there not an atrocity being committed? Where a warring faction existed? Now, I'm not justifying any atrocity. I'm simply saying,
because if we do the equivalence, then we will
not a false equivalent. A death of 1 and a death of 10 is just as bad. So that's false equivalent to say more were being here, less were being here.
Ambassador Brown. Ambassador
But
Brown.
let me finish now. I need to answer the question.
Good.
Okay.
If we need more time, I will give you all more time. The simple point here is this: atrocities because of the war was being committed everywhere across Liberia, including in Monrovia. Now, for me, a former student leader whose friends, for the direction they were taking for safety and security, because all of us went into hiding, the direction they decided to head. If I probably had gone across the bridge, like Weah and Lewo Tapia and Momolu Lavla were attempting to do, and what a Galawolo boy. You remember Galawolo?
Right. Benedict Galawolo.
Yes, they were arrested and summarily executed. I probably would have been arrested and summarily executed. Fortunately, I made it from Newport Street, where I was living, to the old road. I felt and still feel today responsible for the conflict that happened in Liberia. Not because I took a gun and shot anybody, not because I advocated for anybody to be shot, but because as a student leader on the campus of the University of Liberia, I advocated for change. I did not know then that the advocacy we were bringing and claiming, and you know the popular rhetoric we had, Mohammed, even with bullet to our breast, we will resist. People were actually taking live bullets. And I, as a former student leader, was supposed to run away and say, oh no, this one too much. Yeah, this is not what I'm bargaining for. My option is to go high in another country, probably get a PhD. I've always wanted to get a PhD, probably get a scholarship, go to school. Those were things I wish I would have been able to do. But what I decided, along with other Liberians, I will do is to work as best as I can to bring peace to the country. Fortunately, in 2003, because of the advocacy I was involved with, along with others internally, I headed as chief negotiator the government delegation to Accra. And the peace the country enjoying today has my signature affixed to it, along with other Liberians.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We have to move on. But do you take any responsibility for the atrocities and the mayhem, the destruction of the NPFL?
I don't know. I kept saying to you, and I said to the TRC, this guilt by association is wrong for our country. We need to stop it. We really do need to stop it. If you know of anything that Louis Brown has done personally, I'm open, and this is why I'm open to supporting the establishment of a war on economic crimes court in the country. People think court should just punish, but court should also exonerate and clear up some of these doubts and misconceptions. And that's why in Accra, we agreed to set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Look, you're asking me, and you are a Liberian, Dennis Jah. Your country was at war for more than 30 years. And you are asking me to take responsibility for one of the factions when you, as a Liberian, for 30 years, your country was sucked in young people, old people, disabled, children, men, women. Their blood was being soaked into the soil of this country. And you're asking me, and you don't want to beat your own chest to say something was wrong with our country, but you're more comfortable to say, no, that Louis Brown ain't me. It can't be me. It got to be somebody like Louis Brown. Because
I'm not suggesting that. I'm asking for personal responsibility if you have.
What personal responsibility? I
So,
have
so just say
never
no, then we move on.
harmed anyone. I've never I challenged
All right.
anybody. In fact, I led our country to seek peace and achieve the peace. Nobody
Ambassador
can
Brown.
tell you. Mhm.
Ambassador Brown, so the war ended. At some point,
Mhm.
we elected Charles Taylor, and you served in our administration. Earlier, I asked, um, when Taylor was president of our country, I believe you might have better understanding of things he did as president that were wrong, and you chose to stay in that administration. Could it still be the fact that there were no options still? Or is the Louis Brown, who I am getting to know on this point, that he's one of those who will stay in the country no matter what? I'm not suggesting you should have left the country. There's something called resignation when there's a disagreement. That's one point. The other point I want to make, the other question I want to ask is, so you became head of FPRC, and it was this Wulubalu about a house that you have built. There was the first elected government after the war, a war you experienced to a greater extent than most people, given your proximity and the area you were. And you saw the human suffering that you articulated in your TRC testimony. So there was this Louis Brown now, who saw all the suffering, who knew Liberians deserved better and needed better at the time. But then you constructed a house, and you can correct me if that is wrong, that raised eyebrows when people were still hungry. What was going through your mind?
So, you know, I have white hair now, which when you look at that TRC recording, I was all very black.
Yeah. I saw that the comrade was young at the time.
Yes, very, very young.
Mhm.
You know, I don't regret building a house. By the way, I'm talking to you from my house.
Oh, goodness. Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Go
We
ahead.
just
We're
wanted
just
to
going to
see
see the
you.
young Louis Brown.
I don't regret building a house.
Mhm.
I left LPRC and went on to serve in several other places. Let me tell you how the house business actually got started, Anthony.
Mhm.
So I came from work one afternoon. I was renting. I don't know if you know this place called, you know the Winners Chapel?
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay. Behind the Winners Chapel, there's a beach. In Congo Town, there's a beach
Right.
way behind the Winners Chapel.
Mhm.
There's a house that's on that beach that I was renting for 2 years. I have paid for 2 years. About 6 months into the first year, by the way,
Okay.
I come home and I meet a military vehicle parked in front of the house. I meet my children outside. So I walk in and I see this mayor, this ECOMOG mayor, walking and inspecting the house. In fact, as I was entering the house I was renting, I'm hearing feedback, so I don't know where it's coming from. As I
Go
was
ahead. It's not
entering
that bad.
okay, I saw this mayor alighting from my bedroom, my wife and I bedroom. So I asked, what are you doing here? What? My children outside, by the way. They had come from school, they were all outside. And the guy who was giving him the tour of the house said, oh, the man won't buy the house. So I'm like, what? I paid for 2 years on this house. I don't own. Why would my landlord do this to me? Disrespect me in front of my family, put my family aside, and bring a military man into my bedroom and say they're inspecting the house. there and then, I decided I would build my own house, and I rent. I felt insulted. I felt that my family was disrespected and disgraced. That's when I decided I would build a house. The house is still here, the house I'm speaking to you from.
Comrade Brown, so how much wealth did you accumulate working for the MPFL, the MPRG, the MPP, and during your service in government? Because that's relevant, because you know the TRC, it's you know, listed you under, you know, financial crime. So it's important for us to know how much wealth. Are you a very wealthy man? Did you become
Financial crime? Mohammed, you're throwing out all kind of words. What kind of financial crime the TRC listed?
I'm just going by what the TRC
economic crime. It's economic crime.
Semantics. So how wealthy are you as a result of your affiliation with the MPFL, MPRG, NPP, and so on and so forth?
And that is still in connection with the house, if you can mention what I asked in your ask earlier.
So I was asked that question at the TRC. You know, sometimes people think that, oh, those are your behind the lines. That's what they used to call, friends in Monrovia used to call behind the lines. So those are your behind the lines. People just thought, well, all of us were felling logs and selling it, and you know, we were just enriching ourselves and each other behind the lines. That's totally not true. That's totally not true. I was asked the specific question, how wealthy are you? At the TRC hearing, I think it was Commissioner Steele or somebody that asked me, my memory fades now. And I told him I'm a very wealthy man, but not in the terms you think. I'm wealthy in terms of experience. I'm wealthy in terms of mental capacity. I'm wealthy in terms of health. But as to, and that's the problem with our country. Look, I was offered a job after we came from Ghana. And I refused. I said I had taken too long with a bachelor degree I wanted to go to study. Fortunately, I got a scholarship and went to school to get my master's at Johns Hopkins University. Then, and fortunately, I built a house. But it's another story that too many people are like, if I tell you the story of how I even built the house, it was shock and surprise you. But let me tell you more importantly that the TRC, after we formed the TRC, because you asked, I want to clear this up.
Mr. Ambassador, let's not go to that. So just real quick, how liquid are you? How much?
But you got to let me stop now. Stop, Mohammed. You got to let me answer your question. You see, you think your question is just. So if I told you I got $1 billion, you would believe it? You accept it?
At least we'll have that fact, and then you know how you build the house.
No, but it's important.
When you said if you tell us how you build a house, we will not believe it, and we want to hear that story because it became a center of attention at the time.
Then don't stop me now.
All right, go ahead.
If you can go to the point, so I mean, because we are talking about the put you out and why you needed to build a house, all that is very important. We are not trying to dismiss it, but if you can go straight to the point because of time, sir.
So the first story I want to tell you is he mentioned the TRC mentioned me. I want to clear that up because that's very important. So I was at Hopkins doing my second master's when the TRC situation began. First or second, I don't remember now, but I was in school. There is, I think you remember Nathaniel Kwabo. We're all at the University of Liberia, Mohammed. Right, I don't know if you remember. Yeah, I'm giving you names so you can follow up, so you know I'm not lying because I'm on your show. So Mohammed, Nathaniel Kwabo had applied to be executive director of the TRC. We were living not far from each other when I was in school. So he returned and became executive director. And there was not much traction for the TRC. People were not coming forward to give testimonies. So he called me in the States. And of course, Jerome Verdier, who was a classmate of mine, was chairing it. And I had advocated for the TRC. So I decided I would volunteer to come and testify, to be one of the first to come and testify. Perhaps my testimony will open the doors for others to participate. So I flew in on my own expense. I came with my laptop. I did not have a device. I did not have a printer. So they sent the investigators to speak to me. And the investigator first question to me was, are you the Louis Brown who was financial and economic advisor to President Taylor? I said, no, you're wrong. I was never financial and economic advisor to President Taylor. Then he looked at his sheet of paper in front of him. He said, well, that's our information. I said, well, information wrong. Didn't do good research. Fast forward. I got through preparing my statement. So I realized there was a mindset I was dealing with. So I got through preparing my statement, but I did not have a way to print it. So there's this journalist, Trouble Swah. Trouble Swah was on the initial investigative team that came to interview me before I made the appearance. The day I should have made an appearance is the day Dr. Sawyer finally agreed to make an appearance. So they scheduled Dr. Sawyer before me. Actually, I should have been the first. I think Dr. Sawyer was one of the first. So I did mine after him, I think the following day. I asked for a pen drive. And my friend Nat Kwabo asked the team to come back to me because they are not far gone from me, to come back to me with their pen drive so I can download my statement, and then they will print it and take it to the pavilion for me that moment. When the man came back and I plugged my pen drive in the laptop to transfer my statement to a pen drive, it was not just a pen drive, it was a recording device. And on that recording device, they had what they call a profile of Louis Brown. 98% of everything written there about me, I was reading from myself for the first time in my life. This was the unbiased group I was going to sit before. I got angry. I copied it to my laptop, then I called Nat and said, I'm done. I'm not coming there. I can't come before a group that has this kind of impression about me. That's totally false. They apologized to me. And I still decided I would go there because truthfully, again, that's my nature. I felt responsible for the creation of the TRC. So I would not abandon it because of a Trouble Swah who had nothing to do with it, or others who got this perception and misconceived notion. So, fast track, I deliver my statement. And if you look at my opening, the first day I should have spoken, if you look at my opening, the chair apologized to me because I raised this matter and said, this is why people don't want to come, because people are prejudging them. And this commission was not created for that purpose. Go for facts, not to prejudge people. Now, when the first draft came up, in that my name was never mentioned. In that report, what was included was that Edwin Snow has signed an agreement as LPRC managing director. Edwin Snow did not sign the agreement that they were referring to. I signed the agreement as managing director 10 days before I left the LPRC. So I went back to the TRC commissioners. There was this commissioner for who used to be with Son Yong Moon, but he used to work, I think, at LEC. I've forgotten his name. I spoke to at least 2 or 3 of the commissioners and said, if this kind of report goes out, it would destroy the credibility of the TRC. Edwin Snow was not. I was. I took the folder of the agreement that we had signed with a group called West Oil Liberia. I took the facts and presented it to the chair and said, please correct this. Edwin Snow was deputy. I was managing director in this period. There was no further investigation of this matter. That is how my name came in the subsequent list in terms of correcting that which I had helped them to correct.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Briefly about the house. The house, people are talking about it. What is the worth of it? Did you have that money to build that house? Let's talk briefly about the house so we can move on.
Yes. How would I have built it without the money to build it?
Mm-hmm. How much?
This house is at least 20, if not 30 years old. So at the time of construction, it was I don't really remember the exact amount that was built, but it was something that was progressive. We're building this house, chipping, my wife and myself, determined to build a house for ourselves. And fortunately, we did. That's why I'm not paying rent today. And successive management have taken over LPRC and audited. I don't know what the intent of the question is.
Right.
But if the intent is to suggest that maybe we use LPRC money, successively people have audited. I'm still here.
And you don't wish to disclose any estimated amount. And Ambassador Brown, you are
the value of the house today, the value of my house today. Is that what you want to know? Or the time when it was constructed?
At the time it was constructed, just an estimate, in your opinion, how much did you spend, you and your family spend to build the house?
My wife would know that better than I was because she was really involved in it.
All right. Because the rumors will not force you to call something you're not comfortable with.
Yeah, and then everybody will start quoting you online.
Yes. And the reason we thought to bring that question is this has been the talk of the town, as we'll say in Liberia, right? Your house became the talk of the town. So where could Mr. Brown have gotten this money when we had just come from war? And some people are even going as far as saying, well, I think Louis Brown might be the one who set a bad example of people coming to government and just building a big house and everybody looking at it.
Anthony, don't be scared. You can put your name. You say,
Mr. Brown, I am the grandson of the legendary Joa Nimle. I am not a coward.
Exactly.
I am doing my work.
Things. When it's easier to do so, but you're not a coward. I would never call you a coward. So right. Let me say this. Mm-hmm. So. Yes. Many people don't know. Mm-hmm. One of the first things I did was to own businesses in this town. My wife and I owned gas station long before I went to FPRC. Then we owned a travel agency business. I don't know if you ever heard of a Moroyo travel agency. Then we registered businesses that were involved with. My wife was involved with many, many things before we even started. Nobody asked me how I rented a house on the beach and paid for 2 years. But the question is, how did you manage to build a house? Long before everybody who knew me, all my friends who knew me, I was involved in business. I was involved in the travel agency business. Monrovia Travel Agency was owned by me and my wife. It was right on Randall Street, for those of you who may have forgotten.
Comrade Brown, let's just make this rapid. Are you a millionaire right now as you sit here?
I am more than a millionaire, Mohammed.
Thank you.
Money.
I am.
No. Talking about liquid resources, asset, money. In the bank. Are you a millionaire right now?
That's an easy question. When you counting assets, right? One of the things people don't count, and as an accountant, Mohammed, I did accounting at undergraduate level.
Right.
My name alone It's more than $1 million.
Okay.
My name. Nationally and internationally. You know, we're so myopic. You think wealth is just a house or a
You
bank?
mean the name
my name.
Garseedah? The name Garseedah or the name Brown?
Garseedah Brown. It's a brand. It's respected at home and abroad. Part of the reason you feel comfortable trying to get me to explain to you my experiences and why people even talking about me is because my name is recognized. And that is asset. That is asset. And that is liquid asset. Because Mohammed, probably you must go to the next shop across the road. And I told the woman, they said, who is this? They said, this is Louis Brown. I said, oh, give me one commode set or something. She oh, that Mr. Brown, man, you're getting a commode set. I said, I'll come back. I'll send the boy tomorrow to pay. She would likely give it to me. Yeah. That is wealth.
Thank you.
Ambassador Brown, if I may, your middle name, what does it mean?
Man, step here. Literally, it's a Basel word. It's a Basel word for, you know, it says, for you to understand, it's like the footprint of a man. Anything I'm involved with, Garseedah, you will see the footprint of a man. I leave my print on things I do, and you will distinguish it as the print of a man.
Ambassador Brown.
That's the most important thing. Not just the print, but the print of a man.
Ambassador Brown.
And why not a woman?
Because I'm not.
Ambassador Brown, you have written extensively and you have been very vocal criticizing, especially the Weah's government. Okay, I mean, from your LU days, you know, you've been an excellent speaker. So I'm reading these things and I'm saying to myself, well, these things also happened during the Taylor regime, during the Ellen regime. Why is Mr. Brown being so vocal now? What are you seeing in the Weah government that didn't happen in all the governments you served in, Charles Taylor and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf?
There are perhaps few of us, and my friend ACT Fagate is there. There are few of us. You know, the struggle for change in this country is not an administration-centric process. It's not one that, oh, it didn't happen during the war, so it should never happen. It's not one that, oh, it was not consummated. Change is a continuum. I was explaining to someone the other day, and they were saying, but some of the things you are talking about, why Taylor didn't do it, the circumstances and reality of the administration of President Taylor are vastly different from the circumstances and reality of President Sirleaf. And they are vastly different from the circumstances and reality of President Weah. So for instance, in President Taylor, the election was 1995, if I remember well. 97 or 95? 1997. But immediately after that election, in February or March of 1998, the first attack occurred on that government out of Guinea. How we say out of Guinea? Because the international NGOs that were arrested in Lofa, that attack happened on Lofa. The insurgency happened in Lofa. They were arrested, they were carried to Guinea and released to the international community there. That's how we got to know it came from Guinea.
Mr. Brown, sorry to interrupt.
No, I beg you, Dennis.
Yeah, you're saying the realities were different, so there was nothing to criticize in the Taylor's government. That's why you didn't do anything?
No, you're not understanding me.
Okay.
You asked me why am I critical of the Weah government.
Now,
what you don't also understand, and that's what I was trying to contextualize for you. So after that attack, that government became consumed with a situation of war until 2003, when it formally ended with a peace agreement in Accra, Ghana, and Mr. Taylor was taken to agree to go to Calabar in Nigeria. The reality, the point I'm making to you, the reality and circumstances of that government was one of war.
I agree.
How do you? Yes. So I'm saying Mrs. Sirleaf's administration had a different set of reality and circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
That then was restoring the country's foundation. There was anxiety for peace, but also came along with that anxiety came the demand for dividend on peace. Young people want a job. This was happening. They inherited a bank account with very little inside, no electricity, heavy debt. So they went into HIPAA. Theirs was to put the fundamentals of a government back together to extend a sense of governance across the rest of the country. That was the reality. And my reality in the two administrations was that I was working from within. Now, when you are a player on a team, you cannot be screaming when the drawer you're number two. You can't be in the center of the field screaming, that is number two that playing for us. You don't do that.
And Mr. Brown, they also say you can talk with food in your mouth.
True.
Or you can blow whistle when you have water in your mouth.
But that was not the reality. The reality is I was working from within. When you are working from within, some people can do it. Some people can decide that, look, my attitude is, if you do not want to work with an administration, walk away. If you disagree and you fundamentally disagree, walk away.
Right.
But
so it means if you were with Weah today, you wouldn't be criticizing him.
Oh, thank God I'm not. This is one time I probably would have walked away because they're just let me tell you, that's why I started with the reality.
Because you have no history of walking away from any of these jobs. So it's making people to think that, well, maybe he's hanging his clothes where the sun is shining.
So let me tell you this that you don't know. And I will say this for the first time. And President Sirleaf is still alive. After 4 years of being Minister of Information, I went to President Sirleaf and offered to resign. Not because I felt that she had done something that I couldn't reconcile with me internally. No. But because truthfully, I felt like we were moving to another election. I did not want to be a voice of a party. And there was exhaustion as well. So I went there and offered to resign. President Sirleaf, true to her, asked me to stay. And that's when she offered me the job at the United Nations. It's not that you can't walk away from a job. In my life, and I'm not trying to sound boastful, I have never, ever asked for a job. Never, ever asked for a presidential appointment. I have been asked to serve. And I have found service to country an honorable thing. I don't care how people describe it. I have always found service to country to be an honorable thing.
I do too.
So it's not, and people will tell you, there are some of my critics that say, well, he used to shoot President Sirleaf until President Sirleaf put him there in motion. There are colleagues that are around today that were members of the cabinet. What President said, the way she managed her cabinet, she had weekly cabinet meetings. Every Wednesday was a cabinet meeting. She allowed the cabinet to disagree, to review every fundamental and major decision, policy question decision. Then, even though I was an outsider, I never changed my party. But President Sirleaf, in fact, never, ever once asked me to join her Unity Party. That's why I have enormous respect for this woman. And I could walk into her office an offer of disagreement, and we will go back and forth until we finally agree. I have changed some policies. I have gotten overruled on some policy question, but I was comfortable that I could offer not just my service, but my honest view to President Sirleaf. And also, that's why I believe, in the end, although I was one of the youngest, if not the youngest, in the Taylor administration,
Ambassador,
he named me a chief negotiator of the government of Liberia to Accra, to the Accra Comprehensive Peace Agreement.
Ambassador, you serve Sirleaf, you serve Taylor, you serve George Weah. So those three leaders, who have the far side, who was better? And then my next question is, which you just stated that you've never asked for any position, you've never asked. So you recently was appointed on the commission, a campaign team for Mr. Cummings. Mr. Cummings, they say on this platform that there were individuals who just asked him to serve. So is he not telling
the word volunteer?
Did he ask you, or it was the other way around? Because there seems to be some kind of seems to be incongruent with what
I said to you, I have never asked for a presidential appointment. Never. Mr. Cummings does not run a government.
Okay.
So that's total. I don't know why you, even though there may be fruits, but you compare apples.
So in essence, you actually volunteered. Mr. Cummings didn't ask you. That's why he's trying to get it.
I'm not understanding you, Dennis. You were trying to talk over me.
No, he was saying whether Mr. Cummings asked you to serve on his team or you volunteer.
Look, I will leave that matter with Mr. Cummings and I. But let me just say this to you. He doesn't run a government. That's not a government. What I was saying to you is that I have never, ever, not even once, asked for a government. That's why when I received the letter, after 7 months of service at the United Nations, and by the way, I'm very proud of that service. It's one of those things that I tell you, I believe I've made my name at home and abroad. That's why I consider myself a very wealthy person, the kind of people I can pick up the phone and call anywhere in the world today. That's also wealth. Multiplied exponentially when I served there. I believe I served my country very well at the United Nations. So bottom line is, after 7 months, when President Weah recalled me, there were people calling me, including people who are around President Weah today, that I should not return, my life will be threatened, the condition of which I was being. Come on, I've never run away from my country. Not during war, and certainly not in a time of peace. And that's why I returned to Liberia. Many persons didn't even know I've been in Liberia, in and out, for the last 4 or 5 years. So that's who I am. So no, I under President Taylor, I felt a duty to fight for change in policy from within. Now, there are people who will say, oh, there were atrocities during the war, so you should not have worked for Mr. Taylor. Somebody would still do that. In any case, I felt obligated to help my country. I've always felt obligated to help my country with the talent and gift that God has given me. Point number one. Point number two, I am of such a character that when I wear the jersey of a team, I play on that team. I do not wear the jersey of a team and try to play on another team. I don't try to do that. That's who I am. If I fundamentally disagree and I believe there is no option available to me, I prefer to walk away. But I will not be on a team and wear the jersey of another team or not give my best. And everybody who serves with me on all of the cabinets will tell you, just as I am forceful and passionate and vocal, and all of the presidents and I that I served under have had the opportunity to disagree on major questions.
Ambassador Brown.
Correct.
Whether or not you volunteer or Mr. Cummings asks you to be on his team,
Mhm.
given your wealth of experience with leadership from student level, even at the student level, there's president, secretary general, member of this polo bureau, you are on a team that has no structure. I want to get your opinion on that, Mr. Brown.
Why are you saying that? What do you mean that has no structure?
The team that Mr. Cummings named, the real change team, it has no head. It's a list of names of individuals.
How do you know
Mr. Cummings himself said, well, at some time back, maybe we'll come back to the list to tell us who's doing this, who's doing that. No. So as a guy in the media area, if I want to reach out to Team Cummings, I think I have to call Louis Brown now, because maybe I like the guy, but it will not be in any particular role, right? So I want you to speak to that. And then you also said, we will beat them like a drum. Where are you getting this kind of confidence from, Mr. Brown? And I think I heard you saying you've never been on a losing team. Is that correct? Then how come you were not successful? I understand you ran before for the Senate.
I said, yeah. I said I have never lost.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been on a team to lose a presidential campaign or a presidential election. Mm-hmm. And yes, we will beat President Weah like an old drum. And here's why. First, we will do the work that we need to do to win the election. But number two, the president is himself making it easy to beat him. Even though he's the incumbent, even though they have the coffers of the country to dabble into and run dry. But I mean, look at their decisions. Look, I am going all across the country. You say, where my confidence coming from? My confidence coming from the people. Anthony, people are suffering in this country. I don't know where each of you may be or how connected you are to people on the ground here. There is no household, literally no household that is spared. Even government officials of this government are bemused and flabbergasted about the performance of their boss. There are ministers who've confided in me that they have not had the chance to sit with the president on any question that's confronting them. This place is on autopilot. People are suffering. People are suffering. And the fact of the matter is, it's dawning on people that President Weah simply does not care. He does not care. He doesn't.
So, Mr. Brown,
look, the first 6 years should have been his best year. Now you hear them. Let me just make this point, Dennis. You hear them jumping all over the place. How they pass MCC. Oh, we passed MCC. Amen. Amen. People are shameless. So your child goes to school. You pay school fee for 4 years. If I make that 5 years. So your child has all the books, more than the other children. And your child, in the 5th time of asking, barely squeaks through, barely makes it. So that the teacher tells you that, yeah, you know, your child, after 5 times, your child not passed. But you know, well, your child passed after 5 times of trying. You stay passed on a condition. Then the teacher is telling you, when you the parent, you go over the report card, the teacher start telling you, Anthony, yeah, you know, but you know, the space in the next classroom already full. Because in truth, they want somebody to go sit down there for another 5 years before they can pass. Because your record is that you got to take the test 5 times before you pass it. So they say, look, plenty of people have been passing ahead of you. Even though you pass and you're supposed to go to the next class, but you know the next class already full. So you know, what you can do with your passing, with your card, you know, carry your son to different school, but the other school, the class, there are many other serious students that have been doing it and passing every year. They the one now will occupy this space. And they brave enough. In fact, somebody told me they had dinner and party to celebrate that they passed the MCC. Mind they inherited
the dinner was in honor of the finance minister, and he spoke at that event, so that is true. Go ahead.
Jesus Christ. Then you asking me how we beat
Ambassador Weah, their reality, Ambassador Brown, their realities are different.
What reality? Their reality is, now let me tell you, I didn't end that piece. And that's why it's important to understand context. Right. Their reality, they have no war. Nobody attacking them from anywhere.
Right. They don't have the international support they had before.
Look at that. Look at that. Earned support is earned. And look, what drives foreign policy is domestic policy.
Right.
Your domestic policy.
That is very true.
The people came to our bicentennial program and told you, you're stealing, you need to stop. At your bicentennial program, every senior official that speaks to you chastises you about stealing. And you then say, but the international community not giving our money. Well, how about our own resource? We are an independent nation. Are you managing what you have well enough? Is this the best way you can manage what you have? For the president to go on a 7-week safari? 7 to 8 week safari? Then you say the international community must see that and give you their money? What you think these people, your president making more than other presidents?
Yeah. So Mr. Brown,
you're wondering why I'm confident that we'll beat these people like old drum? These people are beating themselves. We just need to work hard and position ourselves. That's all.
Ambassador Brown, here's my question.
Earn a second term, and you know the guy is saying, "You're younger than me. Nobody's stupid yet."
Yeah.
In fact, we went to Bentonville. The pastor who went to pray, he said, "Hey, anybody re-electing Weah here, you signing a death warrant for the country. If your first term that is supposed to be your best effort can look like this, Jesus Christ. The thing you're doing to it, it says, yeah, brother, you're not doing to it."
So Mr. Brown, let's come to your role on Team Cummings. You were let go by President Weah for what he termed non-knowing diplomacy. So let's say
you don't want me to talk. Please.
Let me finish. I just put that one inside so you can get the context.
I know you just setting me up to talk about
it. He said, so if you were not fired by President Weah, will you be on Team Cummings? And true to that, if Charles Taylor was running today, will you be on Team Cummings?
Look at the kind of hypothetical you want me to answer.
What
happened to you today? So who would have spent the time answering hypothetical?
Try.
So no, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add anything to go deal with hypothetical. Let's deal with reality.
Right.
Look, the problem with
President Weah said you asked him for another job.
Answer now, me. And I've said to you emphatically, I have never asked the president. In fact, I said on one online network that the president, I'm sorry to say it, he's the president, which will manage our words with the president because he represents all of us. But the Chinese also say the beginning of wisdom is learning how to call things by their real names. The president simply lied. When the president, and what was worse of that lie was that he was uttering those lies from behind the most sacred place in a church, the pulpit. The president lied. And those around him, including the former minister of state, knows he lied. The former ambassador to Liberia representing ECOWAS knows he lied. A mutual friend, Senator Edwin Snow, knows he lied. He lied. The former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bezonga Finlay, knows he lied. Why? Because they called me asked me to please take a job to be ambassador to Nigeria and ECOWAS. And my wife, who I decided I will consult, who I consult basically on everything, she's my best friend, basically said to me, that's a set. Because in truth, I had options available to me to return to the United Nations. And that's why I was in the country just waiting. Everything basically set, time bound. When I was offered this, I hedged. Everybody who counsel assault said, don't do it. They're trying to set you up. Because the way they recall you from the UN, that's not how you do these things. And he keeps making the same mistake. He keeps making the same mistake. You recall, in fact, actually, the letter, you don't fire an ambassador à poste unless he has committed an atrocious crime. What you do is to recall. He will know diplomacy. That's how he calls it. You recall your ambassador. Take what happened to, now we have Washington, and at the UN, we don't have high-level representation at ambassadorial level. The man he named in Washington was not even consulted. You see, it's not a ministerial post that in your country where you can just fire a man and this man will be acting. When you recall an ambassador and you intend to dismiss him, you recall him, you have that conversation. Then you inform the host country. Then you apply for agreement for the person you intend to send there. Because that host country needs to agree that this man, because they are affording that man diplomatic status. So you don't fire people there. Then you say, okay, but the other person, I'm not appointing you in the same press release. That's not how you fire. He will know diplomacy. That's not how they do it.
Ambassador Brown.
So the question that if you were still there, you wouldn't do you're going to come to those two hypotheticals, or no?
I will answer.
Ambassador Brown, you say you don't want to answer those hypotheticals. So
don't answer for Mr. Brown.
Dennis, I'm following the conversation. The man said repeatedly, you're not going to answer hypotheticals. We got other things to go to.
You have to say it twice. Let him say it.
He said that 2 times now.
You're arguing now.
Let's answer my question, please.
So Mr. Taylor is serving J term in England. And you want me to answer if he were, come on, man, Dennis. Hey, but show me small respect, man. That's a hypothetical that makes no sense. I like to deal with reality. That's my nature. The reality today is that I am a member of Team Cummings. That reality also is that my membership will ensure that we win, because I will work with everybody. I will go everywhere in this country. I will do everything I can possibly do, because deep inside, I fundamentally believe he is the best to help achieve the change. Remember, I said to you at some point on the show that change is a continuum. It's not one thing that you say, oh, this administration was supposed to have achieved the change. So say it didn't achieve it, then the change benefiting now, and therefore nobody will talk about change being in the country. Doesn't make sense. And I've heard people say, who gave you the moral authority? You know, that is normal. I hear you ask that one yet. Who gave you the moral authority to criticize my Liberian citizenship? Confers on me not just a moral authority, but a compelling duty.
Comrade Brown, you condemn George Weah's government, and rightfully so, for the insecurity in the country, the killings and stuff, and the government is not providing adequate security, to protect the Liberian people. Rightfully so.
They have no reason not to. They have absolutely no reason. I mean, this place is so
just let me, and then
mysteriously.
Yeah, the question for me is, former Minister Doki was killed, and allegedly by a supporter of Charles Taylor, but I didn't see any condemnation from you at this point.
So I already tried to describe for you. What you're asking is you didn't read of any condemnation. You didn't read, bro, Mohammed.
Yes.
When you are a member of a team and you have access for your grievances, you use those available accesses to resolve your grievances, to find out what's going on, to deal with what is going on. You don't say, oh, they won't happen. Oh, I will hold a press conference day after tomorrow. Government don't work like that. When you're ready to do that, then you must be ready to walk away. That's not how. So you are a member now of FOL. You're the political analyst, right? If you have a difference with how this show is being managed and run, you have available to you as an insider the opportunity to solve it inside, to deal with it inside. But then you go hold a press conference or you issue a press release to the rest of the country and say that Dennis Jah there, the way he running FOL is unacceptable.
Right.
What are you trying to impress?
Mr. Brown, when it comes to human rights violations, when it comes to atrocities, maybe there's a time that you actually either dissociate or come up openly to say these things.
Yes. Yes, I agree with you. And that is why, for me, more than just talking, my priority was to return the country to a more stable place where it could more likely deal with all of the questions and challenges that we're faced with. And I'm proud, and I'm very proud of what we're able to do. Now we went to Accra and we resolved and agreed with my signature and many others that we will review all the atrocities, all the challenges, not just one group or another group that we may perceive to be against us or we may have issues with, but of everything that's been wrong with our country. That's why I and others agree, let's put the TRC together. We didn't give ourselves immunity. Nothing in the agreement say, if Louis Brown did this, you cannot, nothing in that agreement, Accra Comprehensive Peace Agreement that said, oh, Louis Brown is immune, or all warring factions are immune from having the atrocities reviewed. Isn't that the better way to solve all of this, especially if atrocities are happening all around the country by all of the factions, including here in Monrovia?
Mr. Brown?
Why we created the TRC. That's why we agreed to put it there, to investigate these things and to resolve it so that we never do it again. And the clip of me you played had me saying we must never do this experiment of war again.
I don't know why you call it experiment.
Ambassador Brown?
We have never done this before.
Ambassador Brown.
It was a social experiment. Whether you like the term or not, Dennis, the truth, it was a social experiment of whether or not change would. There were those who believed war was the only way to remove President Doe.
Ambassador Brown.
We must never do that again in our country because the ripple effect on all of us and the country itself should not allow that.
Ambassador Brown.
Yes.
You serve us as an ambassador. Mm-hmm. There's something that we see now that we have not heard neither seen before. Mm-hmm. That is the President of the Republic going on a travel for about 8 weeks. You call it a safari. We had an opportunity to listen to Commissioner Eugene Namwe, who is a covenant of the President. He called a smart travel. He explained that what do we expect that President Weah goes to Morocco, comes back, goes to Egypt, comes back to Liberia, France comes back. So he said they did all this to save money, even though he will not tell us the budget, the estimated budget, but he was prepared to say, well, we're recasting the budget. But then he went up to tell us the dividend. He threw in like around 50 millions. And yet he could not come up with the estimated budget. A delegation he's part of I tried to explain that for you to get a context just in case you missed the interview. My question is, Ambassador Brown, you were at that level. How is these things done? Could they have been done better? What does it say about this travel? Is it a smart travel in the words of Eugene Nambwe, or a safari, as you call it?
Smart travel is an amazing choice of word, isn't it? Smart travel as opposed to dull travel. You know, so no, look, the truth of the matter is
Ambassador, my question is serious and you are laughing.
yeah, because you know it's part of the. You were the exact person who asked me where am I getting the confidence that will beat them like old drum, and that's part of the reason I'm getting the confidence. And for somebody to talk to our country like this, sometimes, you know, I'm tempted to think people just think we're just so stupid in our own country. People just think that it doesn't matter what they do or say. You know, so in today's world of the internet, of virtual meetings, look at the president of Botswana, look down some, look at Ish, the guy who was just elected a year or two ago in Zambia. That's why I started off by telling you the circumstances and reality that President Weah has. It's different from the circumstances and reality President Sirleaf had. This was the same party that condemned her. The reason that she was globetrotting, although her reality was trying to get international debt relief and get the international community to come back to Liberia that had left us during the war. They were calling her globetrotting. The president, look, on the day he was leaving, Legis was struggling for $50 to pay young people all across the country. That's the same day he was chartering a private jet to leave Liberia, to go for 7 weeks. Some of the visit I hear is to see a son play. Then they go to the workout. At some point they say, "Oh."
Ambassador, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to provide a piece of information. Eugene Nambwe said the leg of the trip to Morocco was paid for by the group that invited the president and delegation, and that the government of Liberia is not spending a penny.
He's the Minister of Finance now.
When the question was asked, don't you think they might be against the Code of Conduct law of 2014, Eugene Nambwe said, no, that is not a violation, because somewhere in that law, you know, a president should not receive anything. I believe the amount is $200, or you can correct me on that. Okay, yes, gift, you know. So what do you make of that? You an ambassador, somebody paying for the trip of the president, the delegation, and their meals and hotels. I want you to speak to that too.
So what does it say? That our president, you know, if this was a serious legislature, they will impeach the president. If this was a serious legislature with backbone, serious about defending the independence and integrity of our country. Can you imagine President Joseph Biden telling the American people, my trip to this country is paid for by a group? Can you just allow that to sink? They were trying to give you a cover-up story. And the problem with covering up things is that it's worse than the crime itself. Always ends up being worse. Can you imagine our president is traveling to another country and say that somebody pay for it, that somebody put me in a hotel? This is our president. It is an abomination. If you will go there to represent our country, then go there at our expense. You are our president. You're not representing yourself. So at that meeting, he stopped being president.
Thank you.
The flag of our republic stopped being flown. The emblem, the authority of that office ended. Has it cheapened the office in such a way that some organization. Okay, so this is the excuse. This is it. You are not outraged. This boy is disgracing this place. This boy is disgracing the name of our country. And so it doesn't make sense. And you know it. This is so wrong. They simply cannot deal with the fact. I will explain it to you. Legis can pay $50 in his home county Grand Crew. They were there demonstrating 2-3 days ago. They were demonstrating for $50 per young Liberian. We're struggling with this biometric business, the most important issue of our election. The most important issue of our election. I mean, the most important issue of our democracy, our election. We're still trying to figure out biometric, no biometric, no this, no voter registration. And NEC will tell you they have not given them the funding. But this president can take, under those circumstances, can take money from our covers, from our national dripping, depleted treasury. Meanwhile, just a few weeks ago, they were celebrating that the IMF had given them, because we are enrolling an IMF program, had given them money, direct budgetary support. You taking other people's money, other people's taxpayers' money, and you abusing it and wasting it like this. In this world of virtual meeting, what kind of meeting the president could have gone to that could not be done virtually? What kind of meeting? Yeah. Now you gotta go for sex. This is outrageous. Folks, this is wrong. This is extremely wrong. And for us to sit here and countenance this and think this is a joke. Look, I told you all, yesterday I was in Basel. See people hungry. They were complaining to me that they go to hospital, they just gave them paper. Nothing there, no drugs. They got to go find relatives to go look for drugs. A godfather almost died. Fortunately for him, he had to call his friend, and his friend sent him mobile money, or else his father would have died. No drugs in the place to give his father. And the president would spend like this to go on a safari?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you. Mohammed, you got the last question, and then the guest can give his closing comments. We are way over our time.
Yeah, I think we can just go ahead and and give the ambassador the last word. I don't have any further. I do have more, but we have to respect his time, man.
Right. And Ambassador, please, we want you to come back next week, and but we'll talk behind.
I'm available. I enjoy the show. I'm available.
Right.
There were many things, and I thank you for the opportunity. Some people really think that, we just jump from the sky. There was a friend of mine. He's in the States. He was working with JPC, and you guys used to do the Liberians. You want get your GED or get your paper. You go there, give some kind of story about how you suffer, who suffer you, and that kind of stuff. So fortunately for me, this guy and I went to school at the University of Liberia, like Mohammed. And he was there assisting the Justice Department, sort of validating some of these stories. And this guy wrote a story and said that Louis Brown had this pickup load of armed men, and I ran into her. I forced her in the pickup, then I carried her to her house. And then I said, I will send my armed men for you tonight. And that's how she escaped the country and ended up in America, and so she was seeking asylum. So they sent the story to this guy to validate. The guy looked at the story and said, this can never be true. And but again, no, that's true. I mean, with tissue and all, crying. Then he asked her, do you know this guy? And she said, yeah, I know the man. The guy said, no, you don't know him. I know him. He's my friend. This is not the character that I know you're talking about. So tell me the truth. Then she came and said, oh, you know, somebody had told me to use a knee. They say, we are using anybody new kind of to get asylum. So people have carried all kinds of wild stories, and we all need to be aware of our own prejudices and perceptions of individuals. So I'm happy for the opportunity to share some of my pieces, some of my story, not all of it, but at least some of it. And to the extent I was able to explain some of these things, I feel good about it. But I want to thank all of you. Our country is in a difficult place, Dennis, Mohammed, and Anthony. I know you guys are journalists. You need to ask the hard questions. You need to seem impartial. But Liberia is at a point now we have to choose. Not parties, but what's right for the country. And today, President Weah is making the choice. It's really making the choice easier for all of us. If we sit and allow the president to continue as he is continuing, and we just, you know, that other people's business, not our business, we will inherit a worse country than we currently have. And it is already worse. It is bad. So I want to appeal to all of us. That nationalistic fervor. I'm not brave more than anybody. I'm not stronger than many Liberians. But I'm determined. Part of my determination is to end President Weah's term democratically. Because he lied on me and said, I say he will not reach 2023. I'm not God. I have no means to stop his life. But he does not deserve a second term. We deserve better. This place deserves better. The poor people struck. Look, right to Vamoma House. I don't know if you all know Vamoma House.
Yeah.
Right there. Look at the elderly women sitting on the side of the road every day. Around midday, a church next door got to give them one hot plate a day. People are suffering here. And the president turns his blind eye and takes his friends with him for them to go to the World Cup and go. You know, the fact that our president will sit down in other people's country. So the meeting finished. Then he sit down in Morocco. King Ayel. How much more can this boy disgrace us? How much more? You, the president of our country, you sit down in other people's country. You killing time. Oh, because I want the plane to come by, then the plane will go by again, then the plane will come. As if you're forced to go on these trips. So our president goes down in other countries. You know the cost to those countries of our president sitting down in their country? They have to receive him as a president. Why is the boy embarrassing us like this? This is outrageous. I beg you, my people. This is not about taking side. It's about standing for your country. I've always done my best in my adult lifetime to stand on the side of my country. It hasn't been easy. It has been tough, but we can do it. We should be determined to do it, each of us. So I want to thank all of you. Anytime you invite me, Dennis, I will come. As long as I have the time to do so, please be assured. I enjoy the conversation. There's much more to be covered. So
much more.
Please let me know.
As we were talking, I said, well, how is Mr. Cummings the one to do all this? But let's leave that. That's another show. Thank you so much for coming.
And then I will explain all of that to you, why I even see him as the best choice of all those that are running.
And I will ask you, because you say you were driving wounded soldier from the war back and forth. I was like, how in the world was he doing that? But thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Not just wounded soldier, wounded people.
Wounded people.
People from front line. I felt responsible just from front line.
Yeah.
Anybody I saw that I could help, I tried to help. Because I just refused to just sit down and say, this is not my responsibility too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your time, and definitely you expect to hear from me. We want to thank our viewers for watching. We want to thank your fellow simist, Mr. Sirleaf, who joined us. And our politics guy, Mr. Anthony, who see politics even in birthday parties.
Yeah. Anthony, I'm here. You've been trying to take me on. Anytime you're ready, I'm here.
I will surely reach out to you, Ambassador. Thank you.
So on that note, we end with our song that says, "We are all Liberians." Whether
Absolutely.
you are for ANC, NDPL, True Work Party, LAP, or LPP, we are all Liberians. And it is incumbent upon all of us to do our utmost best to make our country the glorious land of liberty. Happy Sunday, folks. Bye-bye.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home.